I think we met the first time at the Databricks user group meetup like years back. And we've had a lot of interesting conversations. I've learned a lot from his practical experience of scaling Databricks to an actual real organization, doing DLT stuff, integrating Excel closely onto Databricks also. I often ask him advice on complicated issues regarding architecture or real life usage of Databricks in an organization. He works at Gabler, which is a private pension fund. Is that correct, Guy?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. And so you actually, a lot of the users you've onboarded are actuaries, right? So like non-programmers.
Well, I mean, yes, I guess that's technically true. We're in the process. Let's just be perfectly transparent here. So, I mean, so if we're going to sort of do numbers, we have onboarded 2 of the actuaries, which is not that bad, relatively speaking. And we are trying to get more of them, obviously, and that's part of sort of the backdrop of what I'm going to be talking about today. It's kind of linked to that. How do we actually get people on board, as it were?
So, Geir, I'm not going to talk too much more. You often contribute at meetups, you give talks. You had an awesome talk this summer that there's a recording. I'm going to share that afterwards in the comments. But then let's take it away.
Right. Okay. So it's going to be all right. So I'm going to try to and it's this. Let's see. I need to do share. Let's see my screen now.
Yes.
Okay. So I thought I'd do a short introduction. I don't know. So show of hands, how many of you guys have worked with UV? Let's just sort of get that out of the way. 2 people? Was it 2 people? Okay. Anyway, so the couple of us. 4 people. All right, great. So I'm going to do this short. I didn't. It's kind of hard to gauge, but anyway. So yeah. So Paul gave an introduction. I'm just going to do my usual short introduction. If I can get this thing to switch, there we go. So yeah. So I'm 45. Actually, I'm 46 now. So I'm getting old. I do, as I usually say, I do 3D ops. I do DAD ops, diving ops, and data ops. And I worked as an economist, and then I did a stint at a market research firm called Kantar, and then I've been working in sort of the pension business afterwards. So yeah, my company is called Gabler. Just some numbers here. We manage 60 billion Norwegian kroner. We manage 64 pension funds, and we've got about 400,000 plus individuals registered. And that's, yeah, so we have our business areas are all services relative to the Norwegian pension market. So that's kind of who we are, or who am I, who we are. And I usually like to start with this. This is kind of the Databricks, Azure Databricks reference architecture, and I always think it's good of us to sort of ground ourselves. What is the platform from an Azure Databricks point of view? What are we actually dealing with, right? And these are for all you guys. Obviously, you know this stuff, but anyway, today we're going to be talking, or I'm going to be discussing kind of the top box here mainly. Obviously, I'm not going to be talking about ML ops that much because I don't really do ML, but the data ops and CI/CD tools and the Lakeflow jobs is all kind of bundled together, as it were, with what I'm going to be talking about. All right, and so that kind of serves as the backdrop then. And then how do we deal with this in a meaningful sense? Now, as all of you guys that have worked with UV know, UV is a relatively, yeah, I can switch my, here we go. Introduction to UV, what do you know? Anyway, so UV, super short introduction, right? It came on the market, I believe, late last year, in 2024. It says that it's super fast dependency manager. I don't really care about the fastness. Now, fair enough, it is fast, but I haven't done any tests relative to poetry or anything like that. But my main concern is that it seemed to be a tool that was easier to use in a team, and this was my main objective. I wanted something to make it easier for us to work with the same, so a common set of packages, and how do we manage that across our team. So that was kind of the impetus for me. And then UV came around, that it was a happy coincidence that I was just learning poetry at the time, and I was able to ditch poetry and move straight to UV. So there you go. That's kind of my how I ended up using it. But then I discovered that it has multiple interesting tools or things that you can do with it. All right, so for you guys that already know it, I guess it doesn't really, this may be of less importance, but if you are to install it, you can then either do it as a standalone CLI or via pip or pipx. I suggest using the CLI, and then you can use either. You've got the links here. Basically, you do those commands, and either of those commands, and you're started, basically. Okay. So a bunch of sort of just rattling through a bunch of useful commands that we use semi-daily. To be fair, UV unit we don't really use that much, because the purpose of all of this, of course, is to work with Databricks. So I do bundle init, as it were, rather than UV init. And the way we do this is, I'm going to get to that later on, but the way we do it is we do everything via templates. So we have a DAB template that populates our Pi project, and sort of takes care of all these things. This is how we, as it were, at least the current way that we are sharing our setup amongst the team. And the main guy that is super interesting here, well, I think so at least, is the sort of the middle one, maybe, UV sync. And we use group dependencies a lot, and that way we can switch easily between local development and Databricks Connect development. And to me, this was a game changer, because it opened up the possibility of doing local, sort of purely local development and purely local testing, and then connecting that to a CI/CD pipeline, and that will also be running locally, right? Essentially, it's run locally, and then you push that to Databricks, and it runs as it, well, I guess Databricks locally. so it's all local in the end. All news is local. All right, and now these links don't really work if you guys aren't. If you haven't got my slides, but anyway, it's a little the cheat sheet repo that I found, another cheat sheet, and then it's the UV documentation site. If you guys want these slides, you can have them. Okay, right. So working with UV locally, yeah. So the main thing that you need is you need to have Spark, the Spark 4, installed on your machine, or at least have some kind of mock Spark home. Because if you do that, now I've downloaded the Spark on my machine, so I don't know whether this will work. But the documentation does say that all that is required is for you to have a Spark home. Some of you guys maybe know about this, and if you can comment on that, that'd be good. But if you have some way to point to a Spark home, then VS Code will be happy, and you can work with that as you wish. You need some kind of IDE. I just mentioned VS Code. That is my tool of choice. And you need some Python, you know, because Python is just way better than working with SQL in this particular regard. Even though I'm a traditional SQL guy, so you know I come from SQL. All right, so our workflow then is we basically do this. We run UV sync and then -- group local. We write some tests, we write some code, we run some tests, we run some rough, we run some MyPy, and then we start over and we iterate over this. And once we're happy with that, we can then switch to Databricks Connect by using UV sync group DBC. Yes, Paul.
Yeah, so just to sort of get the overall context for myself here. So I mean, UV is a package manager. It manages Python versions and a Python environment sort of locally, right?
Yes.
Now with UV sync group local, is that like a profile that you then sync to use locally? So it's sort of selecting one specific UV profile, or what does that do actually?
Yeah. So what it does, I can show you afterwards exactly what it does. But essentially, what that does is that it disengages Databricks Connect. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the use case where I use it. So if we do that, then you're able to work fully on your machine, right? And then you use Spark, local Spark, to work with it. But then if you do UV sync group DBC, as I will show you why it's called that, it's just a shorthand. You switch directly over into Databricks Connect, and then you can run your Databricks Connect jobs if you want to do that. So it gives flexibility, and I like that.
Right.
And I'm very keen on rough is also, but the rough is actually the first product that Astral made. Astral are the same guys that made UV, so UV and rough are great. I also like MyPy a lot because even though Python is good, I want it to be stricter, because I'm a sloppy guy, so I need strictness, or else everything is, you know, it's not going to be great. So that's what I like to sort of box myself in. All right, okay, so that's our workflow, and then we can run tests with UV, right? And then you can run something like this, some kind of this is a common command that we use. So UV sync group local, and then ampersand UV run PyQuest PyTest Q, just to sort of get the quick versions, and then everything runs, and it's pretty good. And then UV and dabs, so I believe that is a natural fit. And once you do dab templates and then the UV command that I just sort of rattled through, it's easy to start a new project, and then you have all the team dependencies that you need, and then you are off to the races. All right, and last point then in terms of UV and CI/CD. So we are an Azure, well, or Microsoft shop to begin with, and we use DevOps pipelines for the time being. We are in the process of switching to GitHub, but that's a different story. Anyway, so right now we're DevOps pipelines, and yeah, and it is my belief that you should have all transformations, if you can, in a pipeline, i.e. a Databricks pipeline. And you should orchestrate all of your Databricks jobs, or all of your Databricks, I guess anything that's run on Databricks should be orchestrated by a job, right? And then obviously, once you sort of, if you're in that mindset, then you're going to be working with dabs, right? And in my view, manual notebooks is then an act of desperation. You know, that point when you're only got half a heart left and you're fighting Ganon. It's kind of that kind of desperate. That's where notebooks fit in my way of thinking. So our current CI strategy, right, is that we build and test locally, as I said. make a PR. Once that's accepted, we build and test on the service, i.e. on Azure DevOps service. We deploy them to Databricks, we build all wheels, and we deploy all of these to Databricks. And that way, everyone has everything in Databricks, everything has been tested, and you're kind of on the straight and narrow. Yeah, and then and UV is used in steps 1 and 3. So yeah, that was my presentation. I don't know if before I swap over to VS Code, are there any questions? Anything that you're thinking about?
And I mean, everybody, please ask, whatever question you have. If it's sort of very basic, it doesn't matter. It's this is the moment to just ask whatever you want to ask.
I guess not. So
yeah, we are waiting for the demo actually to better fully understand the thing. So now we can ask questions.
All right. Okay. Fair enough. All right. Let's see. Sure. Okay. Right. Okay. So, yeah. Now you see, I did a little bit of testing here, and I
very
messed
small.
up
The font is very small, Geir. If you can increase it a little bit, it would be awesome.
Right. Okay. How do I do that?
I think Control Plus working.
Is it
Control
better? Is it Control Plus? Is it?
Yeah. No.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. Better?
Better. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this is actually, I ran into a gotcha because the 3.14 has been released. You can't use 3.14 on the Databricks. So I tried to fix that, but I forgot the right way of writing that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to close that. I'm going to show. What I'm going to start with is I'm going to show how we build our projects, and then I'm going to use some commands, and then it's going to fail because of 3.14, and then I'm going to show an actual project that I've been working on, because I noticed the 3.14 issue like literally the minute before we started. So so if that's okay with you, I'm going to try that. Is that okay? I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Good. Thank you. Okay. So okay. So the way we have a mono repo in Gabler. All right. So we're going to choose our mono repo, and we have we have a template, as I say, and a little README, which and I always need to cheat here and copy this in. Then it's super important. For some reason, this doesn't work in Bash. It has to be PowerShell. But it is what it is, right? Oh wow. Okay. My second. So test project, and then my so this is very similar to just starting dabs, right? Okay, so now that's been created, and there it is. And I usually then my workflow is then usually I go in and I open the folder, and I find that. Oops, sorry. Okay, so now I've got a clean project running. I open terminal. And I can then do UV sync group local. And then this at this point is where it's going to mess up because of 3.14.
What's the content of this template? Is there anything special regarding the dependencies or something?
I can show you that. That's a good point. All right, we're going to close essentially, but my point is this now, you know, you have essentially built a local version of Spark. So that was how to sort of to demonstrate the fastness of UV. So the way, that's a good question. All right, so here you see we have 3 dependencies groups. Actually, there's 4. So in UV, the way it works is that anything that you put in dependencies, that's kind of global dependencies. And then you can have these dependency groups. You can have this in poetry as well. But what you do there is that you can then switch between them. But what is really good about UV is that this sync command will actually change the virtual environment. And that's why I think it's so nice to work with, because I don't have to create multiple virtual environments. And Databricks Connect tends to get confused if you have named virtual environments. So that's a pain in pain. And so to try to not have that issue, I do this. And as you see for my local development, I have PySpark, and then I have Databricks development. And the only real difference between these two guys is that I have Databricks Connect rather than PySpark. So and then you can switch between them.
So Geir, this is this is a pipeline project we're looking at now, or what kind of project is this?
So all of my projects is a pipeline project. Yes. No. Well, no. It's a DAB project. So it depends. So are you going to be doing? So what I'm trying to say is that this gives you the ability to work locally with Databricks, while writing your tests and code, and then switch to Databricks Connect if you want to test the code on Databricks. You see?
Yeah.
Did that make sense? So the intent here, it could be anything. It could be just a regular Python project as well, and you just want to sort of push that to, or even a notebook if you want to push that, and that's going to be your DAB, right? But the intent is always to create something that is essentially a package to be sent to Databricks. That's of course an important thing for me.
Stefan?
So it's like, sorry, someone want to ask? So it's like a virtual environment, Python virtual environment, no?
Yes, I mean that's the thing. It does create a virtual environment. So UV Sync creates a virtual environment, but you don't have to deal with multiple virtual environments, because you could do that as well. You could have, I did that initially, VNV local, VNV Databricks, for instance, but Databricks Connect doesn't like that. So this is a way of just quickly switching between the two contexts, and then working depending on whether you're working locally or Databricks, as it were. Stefan.
Yes. Don't you have to pin the version of the Databricks Connect package?
No.
Okay, because last time I tried it, you had to, if you were using Databricks runtime, 15, you had to pin the package at 15. Is that not the case anymore?
No, that's true. But I don't care with those old guys. I always do the latest.
Living on the edge.
Yeah, always, man.
So just there are just to like maybe if you used pipenv or virtualenv or poetry or some of the others, it's pretty similar, but I guess it has better support for doing this kind of sort of switching out some groups and not the whole setup, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
That's exactly right. Let me just see if I can if I do this. Maybe I'm more.
You say you don't care about speed that much, but what's great about UV is that you switch back and forth, but it doesn't have to reinstall them all the time because it's cached across your projects.
Yeah.
So if you have many projects in this monorepo, it'll reuse the resources as long as they're the same versions. So switching is really fast, unless you have to install everything from scratch, which Geir now does.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. So that's kind of starting a new project, and that for this project, just to sort of what this does, right? It you see, it gives it sort of, it has my opinionated way of writing these things, where I have the sources and I have the tests, and everything is kind of is named in a consistent manner, and that's one thing that I really like about the templates for the bundles. All right, okay. So this is oh no, it's gonna take forever.
Can we look at the main.py and the test main.py in the meantime? Is that Databricks code, or what's inside those?
These are, I think, the standard ones that come with DAB.
Yeah.
So this is just the boilerplate stuff, just to sort of get your. So this one, I think, is just a super simple test, just to sort of get yourself started.
What do you have to put in your notebooks, or do you have anything in this template that registers the notebook to run on the clusters, or do you have to write any specific piece of code besides importing something from Databricks Connect?
No. Once you're so okay. So let's see. So Databricks here is not set up at the moment, and of course this is taking forever. So typical. I should have tested this, but this is what always happens, isn't it? When you. But okay. Let's ignore that one. Let's open one of my other projects. That actually does work. just to sort of okay, this is a project that I've been working on lately. The idea of this project is to sort of deal with variants, and here I have made a bunch of tests and stuff, and we can look at that. So you, Stefan, your question again. So what do you want to see? Sorry, I forget.
Yeah, no, so basically, it's been a while since I set up Databricks Connect, but basically you have to authenticate your script or notebook to go to a remote Spark session. So how do you switch between that in your code? Do you have to comment something out all the time, or do you have a switchover that's automatic based on the template, or?
Yeah, okay, that's a fair point. No, what I do is I just so here I am, right? So let's do UV sync DBC. Oh, sorry. Let me just sort of. Oh man, is it going to be slow again?
So now it's building against Databricks, or to be running as Databricks, right?
Yeah. And now just to sort of sort of go into what Stefan was saying. So here you see this is Databricks being set up here, right? And now, since I just opened VS Code, it looks as if Databricks is not installed, but in fact I could just click it and install it, because since all the dependencies is as I wanted them, I can do this. And now, so the cluster is not running. Norway East, you know, we have to wait for the cluster to start, so we're not going to do that. But essentially, then your question, to answer your question, what I tend to do, let's see if I have a notebook here. I think I should have a test, right? Did I delete all of my notebooks? Maybe I did. Oh man, typical. No, essentially you just start a notebook and you choose the virtual environment, and that has then been authenticated via Databricks Connect, and you can run your code. And you can also run it as a Python file. I have never had any issues with that.
I'll try again and send the error message to you.
All right, fair enough. That's fair enough. But okay. So once you're in this, once you're sort of here, right? We can then. So now I've done Databricks Connect, and then I can switch back to local. And once that is done, we can do UV run PyTest. And it'll run all of my tests. And all of this is run against PySpark, right? So that's one of the things that again, something that I really wanted to achieve was that I wanted to write Spark code locally and test it locally. And we can do that using this kind of setup, right? And you can do actual unit tests locally on Spark. So
Geir, question.
Yes.
How do you get the data? Or I mean, like, do you then get the data from Databricks to your local machine and then run it there and then just display it? Or do you work with fake data when you work locally? I mean, how do you do that?
A little bit of both. Now, usually, in my mind, a unit test does not really involve real data, right? The intent is to test some kind of functionality. So all you need to do is to verify that the transformation actually works. And I would argue that if you're doing with actual data, you're doing the integration test. I mean, it's a little bit of semantics, I suppose. But this is my delineage. But if I wanted to test with real data, I would do Databricks Connect. Or, you know, we could go into one of the let's go into one of, like, for instance, one of my let's go into this one, for instance, or maybe this one, right? And once we have Databricks Connect up and running, we can do this run on Databricks, and that'll work as well. So you can choose.
So you're saying that you're using this mostly to develop, maybe not utility function is the word, but like specific logic in unit testing, which you then can apply in other pipelines. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. And I use this kind of, and my idea here is to use this both to develop standard procedures and to develop pipelines in the end. So as in Spark declarative pipelines, because with this setup, right, you can then build Spark, one of the development overnight builds from Spark. So, like, for instance, Spark 4.1, which does have support for Spark declarative pipelines, and then you can run your Spark declarative pipelines totally locally. And another toy project of mine is to build Unity catalog locally. So this is my next piece of the puzzle. That so Zoe and I we bantered a little bit about that on LinkedIn. And my objective is to have Unity catalog, which I have got running on my computer, but then to be able to register and create tables as if I was online in Unity catalog. Right, and that way you can then test the whole thing. And that's kind of that. This is just one of my I really like that. I like the flexibility and the possibility to actually switch out the cloud altogether, right? And at least get a sense for what you're doing.
So what would be the purpose for speed, or if like for development speed, or more insight into the actual transformations? Like when would you kind of recommend doing this?
I would recommend doing this always, right? In my view, this is what Databricks means when they say when they give their talk about or spiel about how to do enterprise development. I think this is this kind of setup is what they have in mind. My interpretation, granted. But if you build stuff with, because this way, right, you can package all of your code, right, into wheels, and then you push it into Databricks, and then you can run the Databricks jobs from the wheels. And in fact, I can show that. I can, if I just hop over to Databricks. Now this is of course the sort of just some Python code running here, right? And then I deployed that to Databricks. All right, let's see. Okay, sorry, I need to switch. Just a second. All right. Okay, so we go into jobs, and this one is called variant, right? And here we go. So this is the one that I've been playing with, and then if we look at that task, right? It's this one is a wheel task, right? It's built directly from the DAB, and so all of the components that I showed earlier is packaged and then pushed up to Databricks. And then Python, right? Just standard stuff. And I said that we in our CI/CD pipelines we push all the wheels to Databricks, so they all end up here in shared wheels. And then I have a bunch of wheels, and they are then available.
Can you zoom in a bit, please?
Sorry. I got a big screen here. Is that better?
Yes.
So did that make sense? So that is kind of my goal, is then to be able to work with Databricks in a very similar way that I would do in an IDE, right? And this way, all of the stuff that we develop as a team is available to all the other teammates, and we don't have to bother with sort of private PyPy indices or anything like that, right? Everything is contained within Databricks, which is again kind of what I wanted to achieve. And as I say, UV is then in all of the pipeline steps as well. Like for instance, here we see that we can look at the pipeline, right? So I have all of the pipelines go like this.
Can you increase the font there also?
I'm sorry. All right. So here is the pipeline that I just ran, right? We can look at that. And then the neat thing here is that so we can see all the things that happened, right? Unit tests and stuff, right? See that? Well, I mean it's fast, but it does say blah blah blah. Does it say? See here, you see the UV thing going on, and then publish code, install Databricks, publish bundle, publish test results, right, etc., etc., etc. And then if we go back to the pipeline again, and we look at it more in detail, we can see that, okay, we have our tests here, 100%, fantastic, and our code coverage, right? And I can look at that. Isn't that neat? I think so. And then this is the same that we looked at earlier, or well, that we can do locally. And this was very important to me, right? I wanted it to be be kind of a proper software engineering, or well, okay, at least more software engineering than the standard way that I've been used to. Okay.
Looks awesome, Geir. I have a ton of questions, but I'm gonna open up for other people before.
So another question is, like, we saw, I guess, two commands now in the demo, the UV sync and the UV test for like PyTest.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any others commands, like interesting commands to show?
Okay, right. Yeah, I mean, I suppose. Let's see, where is it?
So I use UV run a lot, just to say that in the meantime, because then you can basically run any command within the context of the environment you set up.
Yeah, UV run, I use that all the time. I did that here, right, when I ran the, but we can do, like, for instance, we can look at UV pip list. That's also something that I use a lot, just to see what actually is installed. You can do, for instance, if you want to bump your version, you can do UV. I hope I remember the right one now. I think it's version bump minor, I think. Oh, not bum. Haha, but bump.
You're on the list now.
Yeah, exactly. Oh dear. So you know, it's very helpful. You can do, like, for instance, if you want to add something, you can do UV add, and then you do group, and then for instance local. I don't know, what are we gonna add? Some kind of Python library.
There's a Python library called dad jokes, which I use instead of a health check on my APIs.
Dad jokes. Is it like this?
Yeah.
Local dad jokes. There you go. So I added dad jokes. Now that's part of the local build. I mean, so I just think that UV is is multifaceted, and especially this, and in combination with rough, it is just an awesome tool, in my view.
Can you show rough, Geir?
Yeah. Okay. So with rough, I have it's a linter. It sort of replaces black and that kind of thing. If you guys are familiar with that, and I have made these settings, and these settings. To be fair, I've gotten a lot of help from my French friend, or frenemy, my French frenemy, but still, i.e. Claude. If that joke wasn't clear. All right, okay. Yeah, so rough, okay, new terminal. So rough is also a tool that you can, a CLI tool, and also it's an extension to VS Code if you want. But you can do like UV run rough. Is it analyze? I think so. SCR, no, it's RC. Something like that. UV run ref, maybe.
Is it like ref check or something?
Sorry?
Is it ref check or something?
Yeah, it's check, isn't it? It's, here we go, just sort of check, yes. Thank you. Yeah, it is check. So rough check. Oh yeah, okay. So there was no linting errors because I had made sure that there wasn't. But it checks all the lints, right? And it's again, it's one of those fast things. It's pretty good. I like it a lot. Yeah, I haven't sort of, I only scratched the surface on many of these tools, to be perfectly honest. I try to do as little as possible that I can get away with, and I mainly use it at the moment for linting. So because I don't like black, but I do like rough, if that makes sense.
So I mean, we've used rough a lot for like enforcing a specific coding style across our Python code.
Yeah,
and there
and
it's super useful, right?
Yes.
And I think MyPy, which you also mentioned, is also very interesting because it actually picks up on kind of bad coding style in Python. It's quite strict. So if you want to like raise the bar even more, that's something to look into. And then I think if you want to, if you start like doing those checks in your CI/CD pipeline, you can actually kind of force people to follow it, which I guess you're doing, right?
Yes, that's what I'm aiming to. Yes, I want to sort of enforce, but I want it to be, I want people to feel as if they have a choice, if that makes sense, right? So it's like they're gonna choose it because they want to.
But Geir, one question. I mean, it's like, okay, you're doing this now, but you've been working with Databricks for years. Why did you feel a need to go down this path, kind of?
Because I was super frustrated with notebooks. Now, to me, it's so, you know, most of us is probably, you know, we've heard the low cohesion, high oh, and there we go. I'm blanking now. Low coupling. So low coupling, high cohesion, right? That's what you want to achieve. And notebooks are just anything but. It's almost impossible to write a notebook without it being super tightly coupled and loosely cohesively, essentially, because that's in the nature of the notebook. So notebooks are very good for writing tests or some kind of throwaway code you want to test in a cell. But the minute you sort of start moving down the path of pushing it out into production, you're in trouble. So I like very much that Databricks now has enforced Python and SQL files in pipelines and in jobs and that kind of thing. And I actually really like the new UE or GUI for pipelines. I struggled a bit with getting to grips with the new layout of because it's a specific folder structure that you have to adhere to. But then okay, so and this okay, important note from the field. If you guys are doing local development, you have to remember to update your Databricks CLI every once in a while. Because I forgot about that, and it just gave me all kinds of weird errors. And when I tried to do the new pipeline layout, and that is because you have to update the CLI, and once you've done that, everything is fine. And then I struggled a lot with getting the schema for the YAML to do, you know, type checking in or to get some intelligence in like, for instance, here, right? So if we look at my YAML here, and I wanted this kind of thing, right? And that was hard. Well, it wasn't hard, but Databricks made it super hard because the assistant is useless. The assistant told me that Databricks does not actually provide this schema anymore, but it does, right? You just have to write Databricks schema in the CLI, and it produces the schema, and then you can store that schema to a file, and lo and behold, you've got some way of actually knowing what these things mean, which is important if you're working with YAML, at least in my view, because YAML is super hard to get into if you don't get help. Okay. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, there's a question from Christopher here.
I'm
Let's
sorry,
see.
I didn't see. I'm struggling with the
No,
switch
there's a
between
question
those.
here. Yeah,
Yes.
I can read it. Do you have the ETL processing packed up in Wheels or just the utilities?
Both.
You also have the ETL in Wheels.
Yes. And I really like that in the new GUI, where you can actually do that. I'm going to then do another project. Unfortunately, this is a project that failed, and for those of you who saw my comment on the chat that Alexandra answered a while ago or some days ago, this is sort of based on this thing. Let's see. Where are you now? Grow DLT, divide and conquer. Yeah, here. This one. This is the new. This conforms with the new pipeline layout. And here, all the way to the bottom, you can do this, and then you can link your wheels to your pipelines just as you can in your jobs. And this is major win from Databricks, in my view, because that way you can have all your code in wheels, and you can just refer to that in your actual pipeline definitions, which is great.
So it means you can now you can deploy Wheels as DLT slash pipelines, right? Instead of having to conform to the explicit DLT format we previously had.
Well, yes and no. You need to have the decorator, right? So you need a, but, and I haven't tested this, so I can't be sure, but I would imagine that since it's a .py file now, and since PySpark pipelines is a thing, then you can just yes, you can bundle it as a wheel, and you can actually deploy it in the same way. I believe so, but I haven't been able to test yet. All right.
Yeah, I have a last question regarding like the wheels, because the point of creating a wheel is later actually to deploy it to a PyPy index actually. So like deploying to
that's
a
not true.
workspace.
No, it's not to deploy to PyPy. It's just to build it to some kind of, it's like a NuGet, right? If you've done the C# work, the objective is to deploy a unit of or a bunch of code together to bundle it.
Yeah,
That's
but
the
you can bundle it in a folder. I mean, you are
Yes.
deploying to the workspace of Databricks, which
Yes.
is, you know, a file system actually, more or less. So, I mean,
Yes.
yeah, it's creating a wheel actually. The point is to deploy it to a PyPy index actually, so you can manage versioning. You can, otherwise, like someone could just came and delete the wheel like this on the workspace, break all
that's
your
true.
work or pipelines.
They could do that, but then but my view is this: we are a small team here. Everyone knows everyone, and if you break it, you own it. So, you know, but sure. I mean, I don't disagree with you. It would be nice to push it to PyPy, but my point is, you don't have to. You can manage it locally within Databricks, and then in fact Databricks becomes the index. right?
Yeah, you can think about like this. However, the indexes do more than just a repository. But yeah, so you don't have for the moment a plan to push this work to this wheel to a by index, no?
No, because this is all our work. It's the only at the moment there is no point in. I mean the only reason why I would push it to PyPy is if I wanted to get the data or sorry, to get the wheels that I could do pip install on locally as well. But I already do that by referencing it via UV as editable editable modules, right? And so I don't see the point because that's what I want. I want the latest and greatest of all of my colleagues' work. And I don't really see the point in pulling that or pushing it to PyPy and then pulling it down. Why? If everything's in a mono repo anyway, I can just cross-reference it. That to me is much better. And then everyone is again, it's this principle of one for all for one. If you break it, you own it, that kind of thing. So it is very much linked to our way of thinking as a team. This is not meant to deploy to, obviously I am not here selling our packages, at least for the time being. Then it would be a different story. But right now, I think it's good to our current workflow. It works for us.
Okay, great.
So, I mean, I think there's like up until very recently, the only way to deploy a pipeline was to actually, or let's say DLT was to actually do it like they wanted it to be done, or like the default way of doing it, to put it that way, right? And I mean, in terms of deploying like notebook jobs, I mean, you could, or jobs, there's a number of ways, like a Java, jar, a Python wheel, a notebook, a Git reference notebook, etc., etc. And I do think with Databricks asset bundles becoming a very powerful tool, a more elegant and flexible tool, it's a natural centerpiece of a sort of enterprise way of working, right? And then I think the question here is sort of like, okay, how do you in your organization adapt your way of working to whatever preferences or user groups you have in your organization, right? And I mean the answer to that could be different depending on, are you mostly full stack data scientists? Is it mostly SQL people? I mean, it's just mostly software engineers. And then like also sort of what level of maturity do you have in your organization? Because I mean, if there's a small team that's building extremely elaborate logic, then unit testing that logic is very powerful, right? And to have that in place is very useful. And I think also an aspect here is about sort of determinism. So how much can you trust that what you're working on is going to be deployed and run the exactly same way, right? And if you have a wheel, it is pretty precise. Now, if you deploy a bundle with, let's say, folder-based bundle deploy, it's also pretty precise, but you don't have the option of running it locally in the same way. Or maybe you could even, but it would be a different way of sort of achieving the same thing, sort of.
Sure. I mean, this is one of the good things right now is that we have multiple ways of doing things. This is something that I really like. This was something that I developed with a previous colleague of mine who just joined, as I saw. And I believe it's been very successful. We achieved many of the goals that I wanted to achieve in terms of workflow, in terms of code management, in terms of making sure that we actually are able to verify our stuff. And I believe, Paul, that we should, every one of us should strive towards actually doing unit testing, and we should unit test everything, because this is the way the grown-ups do it, right? Why are we lagging behind as data people? There's no point. We should be marching ahead. We are the leaders, right? There's no point in being second guessing ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're making great points, Geir. And I mean, there's a complexity in the setup of being in a data organization or a data team or whatever that can make these decisions a bit sort of obfuscated or difficult sometimes. But I mean, I think your arguments are interesting. And then just to sort of mention that at the previous moment, like. I worked on a data platform. It was I think it was EMR. It was Spark, managed by DataQ on Amazon, and there we had like I built the unit testing framework for actually notebooks. So actually, you like it kind of enforced that to read the table, you had to use like a specific table reading function, and what it would do is that if you were testing in a unit test, it would read local data with local Spark instead of reading from a cloud cluster, basically. Now, yeah. What I noticed is that we try to develop like some kind of data contract in Python where you define the expected input and output schemas. You would kind of like unit test your notebook code, like your pipeline code, right? And then what we would do, we would have example values for each field, like email, phone number, whatever. And then you could say that, okay, at least if one record makes it through the whole notebook, then at least there is a certain confidence that this code will not crash, right? So like in terms, you can't guarantee that the data transformation in itself is correct, but you can guarantee that the code ran at least. But what's interesting was that that the exercise of building like a data contract and a catalog of fields integrated very, very quickly into the test data for the unit testing. So that kind of became one single apparatus somehow.
Yeah, and that's my point, right? Whenever, like for instance, okay, so whenever if we're doing SQL work, right? If we just sort of try to decompose what we're actually doing, essentially we're getting some data, and then we're joining that together. What is that? Well, you're making some kind of loop, and you are essentially, that's what's going on behind the scenes, right? So you are matching data, and then you're looping over, and then you're returning a bag, right, of data. And then once you have that bag, you need to look within the bag for certain things, and you want to do some transformations on that, right? Now, that's a very sort of just a short hop and a skip to saying that, well, what if we split away the transformation? And then we say that on the one hand, we have the data wrangling, and on the other hand, we have the data transformations, and we can test the transformations. And if the transformation works, then it'll work on the data as well, unless the data is totally borked, at which point you need DQX, which is also a great tool that we have started using. Now, this is a sort of full-scale integration test tool, in my view. It is not for unit testing. But as I say, with regards to what you mentioned here, Paul, the issue is the notebook. The notebook just makes everything more complicated than if you're doing pure Python. That's why I believe that you should, or even SQL. You can argue that you could test with SQL, but there it gets messy, right? Because it's very, very difficult to write proper unit tests for SQL. But anyway, so that's kind of my gist. Yeah, no, but we we have found great success and gained some confidence from using this setup, and I believe in it, right? So we will carry on with this, and UV was a game changer. So that was the impetus for this talk, really, to try to convince anyone who's not using UV to start using UV. And as I said in my talk at Know It, everyone should develop their stuff locally, because that's much better. Even though the Databricks UI has come a long way, to be fair.
Yeah, just like if someone does not want to use UV, what is the alternative? I mean, what's the let's say this is the good way to do it. What's the bad way, or how to do it in different way?
Well, the bad way would be pip, right? Pip is just super complicated to deal with. Then you have to deal with all of the complexities of back in the bad old days, as it were. I mean, dealing with the virtual environments and how are you going to deal with the version changes and all these kinds of things. It's just super hard and complicated and messy, and especially in a team. So that would be the bad way. And then I guess I'm not entirely sure how you would rank poetry versus UV. To be fair, they seem to do similar things. And my understanding is that UV is newer and faster and better and blah 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 blah, etc. 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 But I have no way of verifying that. I like it.
So I tried both, and I feel like my impression was that UV is more solid, way faster, and it also seems to be winning. Like wherever I look, UV seems to be the choice. So in a full stack project I'm working on, we're replacing pipenv with UV, and hopefully going to bring down the time of the whole GitHub Actions flow massively. So the CI/CD would become way more efficient, basically.
Yep.
So I think I'm pretty sure Databricks going to are using UV locally, and that's going to be way to go also. So I think that to me it seems like a safe choice, somewhere to go. And I do think there's another point which is interesting regarding working locally. I'm not saying working locally is going to solve all the needs, but there is this change now in software development where you have very powerful yet precise vibe coding super engineers, sort of. And they can do, like with Cloud Code, you can do massive amounts of code pretty precisely on a local code base very, very fast. But that kind of depends on you controlling like your setup for doing that kind of work, especially if you're doing several tools. So for example, one friend told me that I think it's called Git work trees, where you can work on multiple branches on the same code base at the same time. So he uses Claude to refactor in one version of that code, and at the same time he uses Copilot to work in a different branch on the same code doing changes. And I mean, that kind of complexity, it's going to be a little bit hard to get that into the Databricks UX at the same time that they try to accommodate for the normal data engineers, right? Because those are kind of two different personas somehow.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. No, for sure. It's that's true.
So you may have soon some similar features in Databricks notebooks, maybe, no? To have vibe coding similar to a local one.
Yeah, and I'm sure Databricks is going to push the limit here also. And I think there's one thing which is very interesting is, okay, how about vibe coding on your, like, vibe studying or vibe exploring your data? So it's not only about the code, but actually finding relationships in your data, etc. And obviously the huge advantage of Databricks is that you are in a context where all your data is, right? And you're also in a context where you have access to a lot of LLMs and stuff. So I'm sure there's going to be there will arise ways of doing data work which is more complex but very powerful that we have not yet seen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still think that notebooks are dying.